My name is Ramona, and I am 34 years old. Right now, I am sitting in my corner office on the 14th floor, looking down at the city lights of Austin, Texas. A few weeks ago, a man laughed in my face at a rooftop bar and told me I was pathetic for not having a real job. He had no idea that the very next morning I would be the one deciding his future. Sometimes life has a funny way of balancing things out, and this is the story of how that balance came for him. Before we dive into what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments below. If you enjoy stories about unexpected twists and satisfying endings, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you will want to stay until the end to see the look on his face when he walked into my office. Let me take you back to the beginning so you can understand how I got here and why that night at the bar hit me the way it did. I am the CEO and founder of Sterling Creative Agency, a marketing and branding company based right here in Austin. We have about 85 employees, a beautiful office downtown, and annual revenue of around $12 million. But 8 years ago, none of this existed. I started this company from a tiny studio apartment with nothing but a laptop, a dream, and about $3,000 in savings that I had scraped together from my first job out of college. Those early years were brutal. I remember eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights because I could not afford anything else. I remember working 18-hour days, sending out hundreds of cold emails and getting rejected over and over again. There were moments when I thought about giving up when the bills were piling up and I had no idea how I was going to make rent. But something inside me refused to quit. I kept pushing, kept hustling, kept believing that one day all the sacrifice would be worth it. And eventually it was. Slowly but surely, the clients started coming. First, it was small businesses, local restaurants, boutique shops that needed help with their social media. Then it was bigger companies, startups with real funding corporations looking for fresh creative ideas. Year after year, Sterling Creative grew, and I grew with it. But here is the thing about me that most people do not expect. I do not look like a typical CEO. I do not dress in designer suits or carry expensive handbags. Most days you will find me in jeans, a comfortable t-shirt, and sneakers. My hair is usually pulled back in a simple ponytail, and I rarely wear jewelry, besides a small pair of stud earrings my mom gave me when I graduated college. I drive a Honda Civic that I bought used back in 2019 because it gets good gas mileage and it is reliable. That is it. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy. Some people think that is strange for someone in my position. They expect CEOs to flaunt their wealth, to wear their success on their sleeves. But that has never been my style. I grew up in a middle-class family outside of Dallas. My dad was an electrician, and my mom worked as a nurse at the local hospital. They taught me from a young age that a person's worth has nothing to do with what they wear or what they drive. It is about character integrity, how you treat other people. Those lessons stuck with me, and I carry them with me to this day. I also learned the value of hard work. Nothing was handed to me growing up. When I went to college, I took out student loans like most people do, and I spent the first 5 years of my career paying them off. Every dollar I earned went toward building something meaningful, not toward impressing people who did not matter. My personal life is pretty simple, too. I am single, have been for about 2 years now after ending a 4-year relationship that just was not working anymore. We wanted different things, and I was not willing to compromise on my dreams for someone who did not fully support them. So I focused on my work on building Sterling Creative into something I could be proud of. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Austin, and honestly, I like it that way. I have my routines, my quiet mornings with coffee, my evening runs through the neighborhood, my weekends spent trying new recipes in my kitchen. My best friend is a woman named Harper. She is 35, works as a veterinarian, and we have known each other since freshman year of college. She is the one person who knows everything about me, who has seen me at my lowest and my highest, who always tells me the truth, even when I do not want to hear it. Harper is like a sister to me, and I do not know what I would do without her. Now, there is one more thing you need to understand about how I run my company. I keep a very low profile. Most of my employees have never met me face to face. I work remotely most of the time, or I come into the office during off hours when hardly anyone is around. The few times I do interact with staff, it is usually through email or video calls where I keep my camera off. My photo is not on the company website. I made that choice intentionally because I want people to feel comfortable to speak freely, to not feel like they are being watched by the boss all the time. The only people who really know me are my HR director, my legal counsel, and a handful of senior managers who I work with directly. Everyone else just knows my name from email signatures and company announcements. They have never seen my face, never heard my voice in person. For all they know, Ramona Clark could be anyone. And that is exactly how Derek Turner and his friends made the biggest mistake of their lives. It was a Friday night in late October, and I was exhausted. The week had been brutal, full of back-to-back meetings, client emergencies, and a dozen fires that needed putting out. All I wanted to do was go home, take a hot bath, and collapse into bed with a good book. But Harper had other plans. She called me around 6:30, right as I was about to leave the office. Her voice was bright and insistent the way it always gets when she wants something. "Mona, you have to come out tonight. My coworker Diana is having her birthday party at that new rooftop bar downtown. It is going to be amazing. Please, please, please come with me." I groaned into the phone. "Harper, I am so tired. Can we do something this weekend instead?" "No," she said firmly. "You have been working nonstop for weeks. You need to get out, have some fun, meet some new people. It will be good for you. I promise we do not have to stay long, just a couple hours." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to stick to my original plan of solitude and self-care, but another part of me knew Harper was right. I had been isolating myself lately, using work as an excuse to avoid social situations. Maybe a night out would be good for me. "Fine," I said with a sigh. "But I am not dressing up." Harper laughed. "Wear whatever you want. Just be there by 8. So that is how I ended up at the Skyline Lounge that Friday night, wearing a simple navy blue dress and flat sandals. No jewelry except my usual earrings, minimal makeup, hair down around my shoulders, because I did not feel like putting in any extra effort. I looked exactly like what I was, a tired woman who would rather be home in her pajamas. The rooftop bar was beautiful, I had to admit. String lights hung overhead, casting a warm glow over the crowd. The Austin skyline sparkled in the background, and the October air was perfect, cool enough to be refreshing without being cold. There were probably 40 people there, friends and co-workers of Diana, clusters of conversation and laughter scattered across the space. Harper found me almost immediately, pulling me into a tight hug before dragging me over to meet the birthday girl. Diana was lovely, warm, and welcoming, thanking me for coming even though we had never met before. But then, Harper got pulled into a conversation with some of her veterinary colleagues, and I found myself alone, drifting toward the bar at the edge of the rooftop. I ordered a sparkling water with lime and settled onto a bar stool, content to people watch for a while. I have always enjoyed observing others, noticing the little details of how they interact, what their body language says about them. It is a skill that has served me well in business. That is when I noticed them. 4 men, probably in their mid-30s, settling onto the bar stools near me. They were dressed to impress all of them. Expensive suits, polished leather shoes, flashy watches that caught the light every time they moved their wrists. They ordered whiskey and began talking loudly, clearly wanting everyone around them to hear how important they were. The one who stood out the most was tall, maybe 6'1", with golden blonde hair, styled perfectly, and a smile that seemed designed to charm. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, in his life who expected the world to bend to his will. I would later learn his name was Derek Turner. His three friends were equally polished. One had dark hair and a thick beard, built like a former athlete. Another wore glasses and had a more intellectual look about him, though his smirk undermined any impression of humility. The fourth was the biggest of the group, broad-shouldered and muscular, with a booming laugh that carried across the rooftop. I tried not to pay attention to them, but they made it difficult. They were talking about work, bragging about deals they had closed and clients they had landed. I caught snippets of their conversation phrases like major agency and Fortune 500 and huge bonus this quarter. They were clearly trying to impress anyone within earshot. Then Derek noticed me. He slid off his bar stool and walked over with the easy confidence of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. Up close, I could see his eyes were a pale blue, and his cologne was expensive, the kind that lingers in a room long after you leave. "Well, hello there," he said, leaning against the bar beside me. "You look like you could use some company." I gave him a polite smile. "I am fine, actually, just waiting for my friend." He did not take the hint. "I am Derek," he said, extending his hand. "And you are Ramona," I said, shaking his hand briefly before pulling away. "Ramona. That is a beautiful name. So, Ramona, what do you do?" It was such a typical question, the kind people ask at parties to size each other up to determine if you are worth their time. I had learned long ago to be vague in these situations. The moment people found out I was a CEO, everything changed. They either got weird and uncomfortable or started trying to network. I preferred to be seen as just another person, at least at first. "I work in business," I said, casually. "Freelance stuff mostly, project management consulting, that kind of thing. Pretty flexible." Derek raised an eyebrow. "Freelance, huh? That sounds interesting. What kind of projects?" "Oh, nothing too exciting," I said, taking a sip of my water. "Small businesses mostly, helping them get organized, figure out their strategy. Nothing like what you probably do." I was testing him, I realized, giving him the chance to show me who he really was. And he did not disappoint. The shift in Derek's demeanor was subtle at first, but unmistakable. The moment I said freelance and small businesses, something changed behind his eyes. His smile remained, but it became sharper, more condescending. He looked me up and down, slowly taking in my simple dress, my lack of jewelry, my flat sandals. I could practically see the calculations happening in his head, the judgment forming. "That sounds nice," he said, but his tone suggested it was anything but nice. "Flexible, right? Must be nice to have all that free time." Before I could respond, he waved over his three friends. They abandoned their spots at the bar and sauntered over, drinks in hand, forming a semicircle around me like predators circling prey. "Guys, this is Ramona," Derek said. "She does freelance work, project management for small businesses." The way he said it made freelance sound like a disease, small businesses like something to be pitied. His friends picked up on the cue immediately. The one with the beard, who I would later learn was named Garrett, looked me over with the same evaluating gaze Derek had used. "Freelance, huh? That is a tough gig these days. No job security, no benefits. How do you manage?" "I manage just fine," I said, keeping my voice even. "It works for me." "The one with glasses," Preston chimed in next. "But do not you worry about the future. I mean, no offense, but freelancing in your 30s, most people are trying to build careers at that age, not just floating around." I felt my jaw tighten, but forced myself to stay calm. "I have a career. It just does not look like what you might expect." "The big one," Lucas laughed. "A career in freelancing. That is cute. Hey, Derek, remember when we thought about going freelance after college, before we realized we actually wanted to make real money?" They all laughed at that, a chorus of condescension that made my stomach turn. I took another sip of my water, buying myself a moment to compose my thoughts. So what do you guys do? I asked, genuinely curious to see how far they would take this. Derek puffed up like a peacock, exactly as I expected. We work at Sterling Creative Agency. It is one of the top marketing firms in Austin, maybe in all of Texas. I am a senior creative director there. These guys are in account management, project leadership, and sales. We handle massive clients, Fortune 500 companies, national brands. Real work, you know? Sounds impressive, I said, carefully. It is, Garrett confirmed. We closed a deal with a major restaurant chain just last week. 7 figures. What was your last project worth, if you do not mind me asking? There it was. The direct challenge, the attempt to put me in my place. I could have ended it right there. I could have told them exactly who I was and watched their faces crumble. But something held me back. I wanted to see how far they would go. I wanted to understand exactly what kind of people were working in my company. My projects are usually pretty small, I admitted. Nothing like what you are describing. That seemed to give them permission to go even further. Derek leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a patronizing half-whisper. Look, Ramona, can I give you some advice? Woman to woman? Well, man to woman, I guess, his friend snickered. At your age, you really should be thinking about stability. Freelancing is fine for kids right out of college, but for a grown woman, it looks kind of sad, honestly. Like you could not make it in the real world. I felt heat rising to my cheeks. Excuse me, I am just being honest, Derek continued. Nobody wants to date a woman who does not have her life together. Men want partners who are successful, ambitious, not someone who is still figuring things out in her mid-30s. Garrett nodded enthusiastically. He is right. My girlfriend works in finance, 6 figures, corner office, the whole package. That is what a real woman looks like. Preston adjusted his glasses. You should consider going back to school maybe, get an MBA or something. Upskill yourself. There is no shame in admitting you need to improve. Lucas delivered the final blow. Or he said with a grin that made my skin crawl, you could just find a rich husband. Let him take care of you. That is probably easier than trying to compete in the real world anyway. They all laughed again, louder this time, clearly pleased with themselves. I sat there for a moment, letting their words wash over me. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell them exactly who they were talking to watch the color drain from their faces. But another part of me, the part that had built a company from nothing, knew that the best revenge is served cold. So instead of exploding, I smiled. Thank you for the advice, I said quietly. I will definitely think about it. I set down my water glass, pulled my phone from my purse, and sent a quick text to Harper. Going home early. We'll explain later. Then I stood up and gathered my things. Leaving already? Derek asked with mock concern. We were just getting to know each other. Early morning, I said simply, Nice meeting you all. As I walked away, I heard Garrett call out behind me. Go home and think about your life choices. Their laughter followed me to the elevator, echoing in my ears as the doors closed. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored walls, and for a moment, I did not recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked calm, composed, almost serene. But inside, I was burning. I pulled out my phone and opened the company directory app. My fingers typed quickly. Derek Turner. The search results loaded instantly. Senior Creative Director. Sterling Creative Agency. Hired 3 years ago. I searched the other names I had heard them use. Garrett Mason. Account Manager. 2.5 years. Preston Webb. Project Manager. 2 years. Lucas Donovan. Sales Executive. 1.5 years. All of them. Every single one of those arrogant, condescending men worked for me. They drew their paychecks from the company I had built with my own 2 hands. They enjoyed benefits I had negotiated, worked in an office I had designed, served clients I had fought to win, and they had just told me I was pathetic for not having a real job. The elevator reached the ground floor. I stepped out into the cool night air and walked to my Honda Civic, the car they probably would have mocked if they had seen it. I sat in the driver's seat for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, processing everything that had just happened. Then I started the engine and drove home, already knowing what I had to do. Sleep did not come that night. I tried lying in the darkness of my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, but every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter. I saw their smirking faces, felt their condescending gazes, traveling up and down my body, measuring my worth by the price of my clothes. Around midnight, I gave up trying to rest and made myself a cup of chamomile tea. I sat on my couch with my laptop, the blue glow of the screen illuminating my living room, as I began to dig deeper into the employment files of Derek Turner and his friends. What I found made my stomach turn. Derek's file was thick with complaints. Multiple female employees had reported feeling uncomfortable around him. He had a habit of making inappropriate comments about women's appearances, of dismissing their ideas in meetings, only to present the same ideas as his own later. One woman in his department had requested a transfer specifically to get away from him. The HR notes indicated he had received verbal warnings, but no serious consequences had ever been implemented. Garrett's record was even worse. A young woman named Sophie in the accounts department had filed a formal complaint about his behavior. He had made suggestive comments to her at a company happy hour, had sent her messages on the internal chat system that crossed professional boundaries. The complaint had resulted in a written warning, but nothing more. Sophie had eventually left the company, entirely citing a toxic work environment in her exit interview. Preston's issues were different, but equally troubling. His performance reviews told a story of missed deadlines and deflected blame. Every time a project went wrong, somehow it was always someone else's fault. Junior team members had complained that he took credit for their work while throwing them under the bus for any failures. His managers had noted these patterns but seemed reluctant to address them directly. Lucas was perhaps the most brazen. Multiple clients had complained about his pushy sales tactics. Colleagues reported that he regularly badmouthed clients behind their backs, mocking their businesses and their intelligence. Most damning was a note from one of his former team leads documenting a conversation where Lucas had called the company's CEO, meaning me, probably some old rich guy who never shows up and does not care about anything but money. I sat back in my chair, letting all of this sink in. These were not just 4 rude men who had insulted me at a bar. These were 4 employees who had been slowly poisoning the culture of the company I had built. They had been creating hostile environments for their colleagues, driving away talented people and undermining everything Sterling Creative was supposed to stand for. This was not about revenge anymore. This was about responsibility. My phone rang, shattering the silence. It was Harper. "Mona, what happened? I got your text. Are you okay?" I told her everything. The conversation at the bar, the insults, the discovery that they all worked for my company. Harper listened in silence, her outrage building with every detail I shared. "You have got to be kidding me," she said when I finished. "They said all that to you? To your face?" "Every word. And they work for you, all 4 of them. All 4. Harper let out a long breath. "Mona, this is insane. What are you going to do?" I looked at my laptop screen, still displaying Derek's employee file. "The right thing," I said, quietly. "I am going to do the right thing." After we hung up, I opened a new email and addressed it to Amanda Wallace, my HR director, and Richard Hayes, my legal counsel. I typed quickly, outlining the situation and requesting an emergency meeting first thing Monday morning. Then I attached the relevant complaint files I had found in my research. For the first time since leaving that rooftop bar, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. The path forward was clear. These men had shown me exactly who they were, not just to me but to their colleagues, their clients, their company. And now I had a responsibility to act. I closed my laptop and finally went to bed. There would be no more sleepless hours, no more replaying their words in my mind. I had a plan, and come Monday, everything would change. Monday morning arrived gray and overcast, the October sky heavy with clouds that threatened rain. It felt appropriate somehow, like even the weather knew something significant was about to happen. I woke up earlier than usual and took extra care getting ready. For the first time in months, I put on proper business attire. A black blazer that I saved for important meetings, tailored trousers, low-heeled pumps that clicked authoritatively on hard floors. I applied makeup carefully professionally and styled my hair into a sleek, polished look that felt miles away from my usual casual ponytail. Before leaving my apartment, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked like a CEO. I looked like the woman who had built a $12 million company from nothing. I looked like someone who was about to change 4 lives forever. I arrived at the Sterling Creative offices at 7:45, a full hour before most employees would trickle in. Amanda and Richard were already waiting in the lobby, looking equal parts curious and concerned. "Thank you both for coming in early," I said, as I led them toward the elevators. This could not wait. Once we were settled in my corner office with the door firmly closed, I told them everything. The party, the conversation, the insults, and finally my late-night research into the employment files. I watched their faces as I spoke, saw the disbelief give way to anger, then to a grim understanding. "I had already reviewed those files myself," Amanda said when I finished. "I have been documenting concerns about all 4 of them for months. But without direction from leadership, my hands were somewhat tied." Richard nodded. "From a legal standpoint, we have more than enough documented cause for termination. The pattern of behavior is clear. Multiple complaints, multiple warnings that went unheeded. Adding this weekend's incident only strengthens the case." "This is not about what happened to me personally," I said firmly. "I want to make that clear. If these were model employees who just happened to say something rude at a bar, I would let it go. But they are not model employees. They have been creating a hostile environment, driving away talented people, and damaging our culture. That ends today." We spent the next hour preparing everything: termination letters, final paychecks, arrangements for their equipment, and access to be revoked. By 9:30, everything was in place. All that remained was the execution. At 9:45, I sent an email to the entire company announcing an all-hands meeting at 10:30 in the main conference room. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. The rumor mill started churning immediately. I could see it on the security cameras. I rarely watched people clustering in small groups, whispering, speculating. Some guessed it was about layoffs. Others thought maybe we were being acquired. A few optimists hoped it was news about bonuses. None of them expected what was actually coming. At 10:25, I stationed myself in the small anteroom connected to the conference space, watching through a narrow window as employees filed in. I saw familiar faces, people I had hired years ago, people who had grown with the company, people who had no idea what their CEO looked like. And then I saw them. Derek entered first, looking as arrogant as ever. His suit jacket perfectly pressed his smile, suggesting he expected to receive praise. Garrett followed close behind, then Preston, then Lucas. They took seats together near the middle of the room, joking and laughing about something I could not hear. I watched Derek lean over to whisper something to his friends, probably speculating about the meeting, maybe making some dismissive comment about whoever was going to speak. He had no idea that in less than 5 minutes his entire world was going to collapse. At 10:30 exactly, I opened the door and walked into the conference room. The conversations died instantly. 85 pairs of eyes turned toward me, most of them filled with curiosity about this unfamiliar woman striding to the front of the room with obvious authority. I could feel the questions rippling through the crowd. Who was she? What was happening? I reached the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces before me. My gaze found Derek's row almost immediately. He was staring at me with a puzzled expression, his brow furrowed clearly, trying to figure out why I looked familiar. Then I saw the moment of recognition hit him. His face went pale, his mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He gripped the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Beside him, his friends were experiencing their own moments of horrible realization, their confident smirks melting into expressions of pure dread. I allowed myself the smallest hint of a smile before I began to speak. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ramona Clark. I am the CEO and founder of Sterling Creative Agency. The room erupted in whispers and murmurs. Some people began to applaud. I held up a hand for silence. I know most of you have never met me in person, and I apologize for that. I have always believed in giving my team space to work without feeling like the boss is watching over their shoulders. But today, I needed to be here in person to address something important. I paused, letting the tension build. This company was built on certain values: respect, professionalism, humility, the belief that every person, regardless of their title or their background, deserves to be treated with dignity. These are not just words on a poster in the break room. They are the foundation of everything we do here. And when those values are violated, there have to be consequences. I could see Derek sinking lower in his chair, trying to make himself invisible. His friends were doing the same, avoiding eye contact with anyone around them. Last Friday night, I attended a social event. I was dressed casually, as I usually am. When people asked what I did for work, I gave vague answers, as is my right. And because of my appearance and my answers, 4 men at that event decided I was beneath them. They mocked me for not having what they considered a real job. They told me I was pathetic, that no one would want to date someone without a career, that I should find a rich man to take care of me since I clearly could not take care of myself. Gasps rippled through the audience. People were looking around, trying to identify the culprits. What those men did not know, I continued, was that I am their employer. They work for this company. They draw their salaries from Sterling Creative. And their behavior that night was just the tip of an iceberg. In reviewing their employment files, I discovered patterns of misconduct, harassment complaints, toxic behavior toward colleagues and clients, a fundamental disrespect for the values this company stands for. I turned my gaze directly to the middle of the room. Derek Turner, Garrett Mason, Preston Webb, Lucas Donovan, please stand up. For a long, terrible moment, none of them moved. The entire room held its breath. Then slowly, reluctantly, they rose to their feet. Their faces were ashen. Their earlier confidence completely evaporated. Based on documented misconduct in your employment files, combined with behavior that fundamentally contradicts our company values, I am terminating your employment with Sterling Creative Agency, effective immediately. HR will assist you in collecting your belongings and completing the offboarding process. Security will escort you from the building. Derek opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, perhaps to beg. I did not give him the chance. Before you say anything, let me be clear. This is not about revenge. If you had simply been rude to a stranger at a party, I would have let it go, but you have been creating a hostile environment for your colleagues. You have been driving away talented people. You have been undermining everything this company is supposed to represent. That is why you are being terminated. The fact that you happen to direct your cruelty at the CEO is simply what brought your behavior to light. I nodded to Amanda and Richard, who had been standing quietly near the door. They moved forward, gesturing for the 4 men to follow them. Derek finally found his voice. "I am sorry. I did not know. If I had known who you were, that I said quietly is exactly the problem. You should not need to know who someone is to treat them with basic respect. The way you treated me is the way you treat anyone you consider beneath you, and that is not acceptable. Not in this company. Not anywhere." He had no response to that. His shoulders slumped in defeat as he followed his friends out of the conference room. The door closed behind them with a soft click that somehow echoed through the silent space. I turned back to the remaining employees, their faces a mixture of shock admiration and, in some cases, visible relief. "Let me be clear about something," I said, my voice softening. "This is not meant to scare anyone. The vast majority of you are wonderful people who treat your colleagues with kindness and professionalism. This company is successful because of you, not despite you. What happened today was about removing a few bad actors who were poisoning our culture. It was about protecting the rest of you." I took a breath. "The lesson I hope you take from this is simple. Treat everyone with respect. You never know who you are talking to, but more importantly, you should never need to know. Every person deserves dignity, whether they are a CEO or a janitor, whether they are dressed in a suit or in jeans and a t-shirt. How you treat people when you think no one important is watching says everything about who you really are." I paused, looking out at the faces before me. "Thank you for your time. If anyone has questions or concerns, my door is open. Now let us get back to doing what we do best, creating amazing work for our clients." The applause started slowly, then built to something genuine and sustained. As I stepped away from the podium, several employees approached to shake my hand to thank me, to share their own experiences with the men who had just been escorted out. I listened to each of them, validated their experiences, promised that things would be better. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly proud of the company I had built. The weeks that followed brought changes I had not anticipated. Word of what happened spread through the industry, though the specific details remained internal. What people knew was that Sterling Creative had taken a stand for its values, that leadership walked the talk, that this was a company where culture mattered. Applications for open positions tripled. Clients reached out specifically because they had heard about our commitment to respect and professionalism. Employees who had been quietly disengaged became more invested, more willing to share ideas and take risks. Sophie, the young woman who had filed the complaint against Garrett before eventually leaving the company, sent me an email. She had heard what happened through a friend who still worked at Sterling Creative. She thanked me for doing what leadership had failed to do when she was there. She was doing well now, working at another agency, but she was grateful to know that things had changed. That email meant more to me than any revenue report or client win. About a week after the meeting, Harper and I went to dinner at our favorite Thai restaurant. Over pad Thai and spring rolls, she asked me how I was really doing. Honestly, I set down my chopsticks and thought about it. I expected to feel more satisfied, like I had won something. But mostly, I just feel relieved. Relieved that it is over. Relieved that I did the right thing. I leaned back in my chair. When I was sitting at that bar listening to them mock me, part of me wanted to tell them right then. I wanted to see their faces, wanted to humiliate them the way they were trying to humiliate me. But that would have been revenge. What I did instead was justice. There is a difference. Harper nodded slowly. You know what I admire most about you. You had all the power in that situation and you used it responsibly. You did not abuse it. You did not make a scene for your own gratification. You went through proper channels, built a real case, and handled it professionally. I took a sip of my water. I had to. If I had just fired them because they were mean to me at a party, I would be no better than they are. But their behavior toward me was just a symptom. The real problem was the pattern, the complaints, the warnings, the colleagues they had hurt. That is what justified the action. Do you think they learned anything? I considered the question. Derek, maybe. He seemed genuinely shaken at the end. The others, I am less sure. Some people never learn, never accept responsibility, never look in the mirror and ask themselves hard questions. But that is not my problem anymore. I gave them the consequence. What they do with it is up to them. We finished our dinner and walked out into the cool evening air. Austin was beautiful at night, the city lights twinkling against the darkening sky. I thought about all the people walking these streets, each of them carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own hidden depths that strangers would never see. That is the thing about people, I said as we walked toward our cars. You never really know who someone is just by looking at them. The homeless man on the corner might be a veteran who served his country. The woman in the grocery store might be raising 3 kids on her own while working 2 jobs. The person in jeans and a t-shirt at the bar might be a CEO who built a company from nothing. Harper smiled. And the guys in expensive suits might be petty, insecure bullies who judge everyone based on appearances. I finished. Yeah, that too. We hugged goodbye, and I drove home alone, thinking about everything that had happened. The humiliation at the bar felt like a distant memory, now replaced by a sense of peace and purpose. I had been tested, and I had responded in a way I could be proud of. When I got home, I stood at my window for a long time looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Derek and his friends were probably licking their wounds, maybe blaming me for their misfortune, maybe starting to realize that their own choices had led them here. It did not matter which. Their stories were no longer intertwined with mine. What mattered was what came next. I thought about the employees I had spoken with after the meeting, the ones who had thanked me, the ones who had shared their own experiences. I thought about Sophie's email. I thought about all the people who deserved to work in an environment where they felt safe, respected, valued. That was why I had built Sterling Creative in the first place. Not for the money or the prestige, but to create something good, something that made people's lives better. Somewhere along the way, I had let myself get too removed, too distant. I had trusted that the culture would maintain itself without my direct involvement. That was a mistake I would not make again. The next morning, I started a new initiative. Monthly town halls where I would address the entire company in person, regular office hours where any employee could come talk to me about anything. A renewed commitment to addressing complaints quickly and thoroughly, not letting them sit in files until they became crises. It was not a perfect solution. No solution ever is, but it was a start. And that is really what this whole experience taught me. Success is not about how much money you make or how impressive your title is. It is not about the clothes you wear or the car you drive or the image you project to the world. Success is about the kind of person you are when no one is watching, when you have nothing to gain, when the person in front of you seems powerless and unimportant. Those 4 men saw a woman they considered beneath them, and they showed her exactly who they really were. They did not know she was their boss, and that was precisely the point. If they had known, they would have been charming and respectful. Their cruelty was reserved for people they thought did not matter. But here is the truth. The truth. I hope anyone listening to this story will carry with them. Everyone matters. The stranger at the bar, the cashier at the grocery store, the person sitting next to you on the bus. Everyone is fighting battles you cannot see, carrying stories you will never know, possessing worth that has nothing to do with their job title or their bank account. Treat people with kindness, not because they might turn out to be your boss, but because it is the right thing to do. Not because you might get something out of it, but because every human being deserves basic dignity and respect. That is the lesson I learned from the worst night of my recent life. And that is the lesson I am trying to pass on to you. So the next time you meet someone new, before you judge them based on what they are wearing or what they do for work, remember this story. Remember Derek Turner and his friends standing in that conference room watching their careers crumble because they could not extend basic courtesy to a stranger. And then choose differently. Choose kindness. Choose respect. Choose to see the human being in front of you, not just the surface they present to the world. Because you never know who you are really talking to. And more importantly, because that is the kind of person you want to be. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I know it was a long one, but I hope it resonated with you in some way. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone judged you unfairly based on your appearance or your job? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Let us create a conversation about respect, about dignity, about the kind of world we want to live in. If this story made you think, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? We share stories like this every week. Stories about real life, real challenges, and real moments of truth. Thank you again for being here, for listening, for caring. I wish you all the kindness and respect you deserve, and I hope you give that same kindness and respect to everyone you meet. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.